All right, good morning, everyone. So glad to be here with you this morning. We are in this series we've been calling The Genius of Jesus. And I don't know what comes to your mind when you think of geniuses, but at least for me, when I think of geniuses, I instantly go to big things like science and math and people who have really, really high IQs. And we're kind of shaping and kind of changing a little bit, maybe the way that we normally think about what it means to be a genius. We started this last week, but we've been using this quote from this pastor and author, Erwin McManus, and it defines genius a little bit differently. He says, genius does not always have the highest IQ, but their combination of originality, imagination, creativity, perspective, passion, and intelligence merge together to help them see the world differently and then create a different world. So even though maybe Jesus isn't someone that you normally think of when you think of geniuses, we fully believe that this is exactly what Jesus did in so many different areas of our lives. And what's really good for us is that there is something different about Jesus's genius than everyone else, right? Is that like if I hang out with Michael Jordan, I'm not going to become a better basketball player. It doesn't matter. If I hang out with Alyssa Liu, I am not going to become a better figure skater by a long shot, let me tell you. In no way, shape, or form, right? But there is something different about Jesus that when we spend time with Jesus, his traits, his genius starts to become the way that we can also live. And so last week, Joel talked about power and the way that Jesus was a genius. It's a weird thing to say, Jesus genius, and he used power as a genius. And this week, we are going to talk about empathy and how Jesus uses empathy as a genius, and he completely changes and shapes empathy. And for some of us, I felt like I needed this week. I kind of needed to break down a little bit specifically. I think there's a lot of different terms that we can sometimes use when it comes to empathy and kind of gather them together, but I think there's some important distinctions. So when we are trying to understand what somebody else is going through, kind of the lowest level is pity, right? Like, this is like looking down on somebody from a distance. Like, you maybe know they're in pain, but you don't really care. That's like when you say, like, glad that's not me, better them than me. Like, that is like when you, like, maybe you're speeding and, like, you see somebody else get pulled over, you're like, ha, didn't catch me, and you just keep on going, right? Like, that's unfortunate for that person, but you're not really that bothered by it, right? This is why, like, supervillains are always like, I pity you, right? Like, it is like maybe one of their biggest words, right? So that is like the lowest level of, like, that someone's in pain, but you don't really care or do anything about it. It's far off, right? Second, kind of next step up is sympathy. This is like when you look at somebody and, like, you acknowledge that they're in pain and, like, even, like, express care because maybe you've even been through something similar. Oftentimes this is like when someone has lost a loved one or maybe is going through something really hard and will say things like, I'm so sorry that happened. Are you okay? And, like, even, like, check in on them. It's like kind of like that level of, like, connection with that person. Like, you understand that they're going through pain and you can maybe even reach out. And then the third step of what we're talking about today is empathy, where you kind of, like, step into this person's experience. Author and researcher Brene Brown says it like this, like, empathy is feeling with people, like seeing things from their perspective and kind of entering into, like, what their emotions might feel like. And one of the things that makes empathy so important is because oftentimes it's what actually leads us to do compassion, like do something with it, right? And you can 100% have compassion without empathy, but there's something about empathy that kind of makes it a little bit more sustainable, makes it come from a better place, right? And to be honest, like, if I was doing this message a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I wouldn't feel like I had to do this sidebar, but I feel like I got to do a sidebar. And maybe for some of you have no clue this is even going on, but there's been, like, this weird, very small, but very vocal minority of people just in the last year or so that have really went on this, like, weird crusade against empathy. And, like, saying, like, empathy is a sin, empathy is, like, something we shouldn't feel for other people. And I think if there's anyone who feels that way, I think they maybe don't understand what empathy really is. So just to kind of make sure we're super clear on this, like, empathy does not mean that you have to approve someone else's behaviors 100%, right? You don't have to fully agree with that person. And empathy is not putting no boundaries on your life, right, and getting taken advantage of. And empathy is not solving all the problems for someone else, right? Like, life is already overwhelming. I can barely figure out my own life, right? I don't need to also have every other person's problems, right? empathy is so much bigger and better than those things. Like empathy is something that God literally wired into your brain. In the 1990s, they did some research on our brains and discovered these things called mirror neurons. That basically, these are the neurons in your brain that when you see other people, you can kind of connect emotionally with them. Like, this is the reason why, like, when you see someone crying, like, you kind of maybe get a little teared up all of a sudden. This is why, like, when you watch a movie by yourself, you might really enjoy it, but you don't laugh. But if you're in a theater full of other people, all of a sudden you're really laughing because those mirror neurons are kicking. And this is also why when you watch a video like this, that pain you just felt, that groan you just made, none of us were in this video. I don't think this man's in this room, right? But we all felt that pain, right? Because of our mirror neurons, right? We saw that pain and we knew at least kind of an idea of how that felt, right? But most of us, if we're honest, we don't really live there consistently, right? Because it is so much easier for us to just label people than to actually understand them. Like someone cuts you off in traffic, man, what an idiot, right? But we don't ever just think like, you know what, maybe they're just having a bad day. Maybe they're overwhelmed right now. Maybe they just, like the rest of us, made a mistake and accidentally pulled out and kind of, didn't time like the way that they were going to be driving well enough, right? No, instead, we categorize, right? Because our brains like shortcuts. It protects us. It simplifies things, right? We see behavior, not the story. It's kind of like an iceberg. Like when sometimes we often like to react to like the things that are above the surface, but we don't see what's underneath, which is the majority of how people are reacting, kind of the backstory to everything. So what I want to do this morning is just share some examples with you of Jesus just showing empathy and some of these genius moments that he has specifically with empathy. And it not only being a really important thing, but maybe one of the most defining characteristics of Jesus, and also how it can shape our lives. And to be honest, like when we talk about empathy from God, I think one of the questions that's a fair question to ask, and maybe you're like, oh, I don't know, can we ask this in church? Is like, does God really understand us? Like, does God really get us? And I know, depending, especially sometimes maybe if you've been going through a hard season, it is like one of those things that it is really easy for us to ask, like, God, like, do you really understand what it feels like to be human? Like this all-powerful, all-knowing, outside of time being. Like it almost feels like, well, God, maybe you feel bad, but maybe it's more like pity, right? Like you don't really get what I'm going through. And if God was just amazing and otherworldly being, that might be a fair question. But with Jesus entering into human history, it changes everything. I want to read this passage from the book of John. This is one of Jesus' disciples writing about him, and he kind of starts his gospel as he's like telling us the story of Jesus' life with this poem. And so he's going to keep saying the word, and when he says the word, just know he is talking about Jesus. You could even just put Jesus every time he says the word, okay? And this is how he describes Jesus as he opens up his gospel. He says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us." Like, basically kind of what we're seeing, not only in this passage, but multiple other passages, is like, when I was a kid growing up, I always just thought, like, Jesus was created at Christmas, right? Like, God made him in that moment to be born. But that is actually not what we see, is that Jesus was actually forever living before that moment in heaven with God as God, right? Like, praised by angels, all the fullness of what it means to be God. And when Christmas happened, in the incarnation, Jesus gave up all of that privilege, all of that power to enter into human history, to be a frail human like us. Which, man, I can't imagine anything more powerful than that, right? Like the one who like made our bodies experience what it meant and felt like to be tired. The one who created our emotions also felt and experienced sadness. The one who created community also experienced betrayal. Like, can God understand us? Absolutely, he can. I think God actually understands us and knows what it means to be human more than we do, because he created and had all of that power and gave it up to be like us. A couple weeks ago, my daughter, Junia, she's 6, we were waking her up for school, and she's been having a rough time recently waking up for school in the morning. And like we had, her bedtime, she's normally asleep by like 8 p.m., and then like waking up around like 7. So like a solid 11 hours, which I feel like anyone would be like, yeah, that's a great night's sleep, right? And I remember one morning we were trying to wake her up and she just would not get up. And then finally she just screamed out, "I am the most tired person in the entire universe." And it was like the most absurd thing, right? Like as a parent, you're like trying not to laugh. Cause like I'm thinking back to like, girl, you just got 11 hours of sleep. Like when you were born, I was getting 1 and 2 hours of sleep a night, right? Like I was doing all-nighters in college for the fun of it, right? Like I didn't even have papers to study for. I was just doing it for the fun. Like I know what it's really like to be tired. And I think sometimes that is how Jesus can view like the way that we like kind of complain and see things. Like he's like, no. I actually understand it better than even you do. Like Jesus is not a God who watches from a distance, but he gets into the mess with us. Jesus didn't just create us. He chose to become like us. And so empathy isn't just understanding someone else's feelings. Like when Jesus shows empathy, he's showing us that he fully knows our joys, our fears, our pain, even our mess ups. And he says, you know what? I love you anyways. When we reflect on our Creator's love, when we show empathy to others, it is when we are joining in with Jesus in the way that he lived. Empathy is not just understanding. It's God's love in action, knowing us completely and loving us as we are. When you have felt the most loved in the world, like it's probably that moment, like when you messed up and someone still shows you love anyways, right? We don't feel fully loved until we are fully known. There's another story of Jesus where he's with his disciples and one of his close friends, Lazarus, gets sick. And Mary and Martha, Lazarus' sisters, send word, say, "Jesus, come quick, he is dying." And Jesus waits. He doesn't go instantly in that moment. And so by the time that he arrives, Lazarus is dead. And you can imagine as someone who passes away, there's a whole room full of people. People are grieving, crying. You probably feel like the heaviness of the room as soon as he walked in. And we see that Jesus was moved in spirit and troubled, like he felt what everyone was feeling in that moment. And then we see this verse that is, you might even know it's famous for being the shortest verse in the Bible. And it says this, that when Jesus walked in, Jesus wept. And look, it's so short, I can even stand in front of the screen and you can still see the whole verse, right? Like Jesus wept in that moment. Jesus doesn't just rush past the grief. He joins in with where they were. He felt the sadness, even though he knew in that moment he could fix it, right? Like Jesus knew what he was about to do. He knew the end of the story. Jesus knew he was about to go resurrect Lazarus and bring him back out of that tomb. But Jesus doesn't skip the grief in that moment. Jesus doesn't just instantly fix it and dismiss it. Instead, he enters into this pain, this sadness that they were all feeling. Like that is empathy. Jesus doesn't just explain it away or minimize it or just fast forward through this. Like, all right, let's get to the better part, right? No, instead, he steps into what they are doing in that moment. And for us, I think that is just always this beautiful reminder of like, if you are going through something right now, if maybe you have all kinds of built up emotions that you've maybe been bottling it up, like don't bottle it up. Don't just numb it away. Don't just do the thing where like something bad happens. You're like, all right, I just need a minute. And that minute is you just scrolling and just kind of acting like you're dealing with it, but you're not really. You're just kind of pretending to get your mind off of that thing for this moment. Just kind of numbing yourself away. Pretending like you're okay. Jesus says, no, it's okay to weep. It's okay to feel those emotions that are present in you and present in the people around you. And for others, this means that when we are hanging out with other people and we can see where they're at, we don't have to have the right words to say. Because guess what? There's probably not right words you could say anyways, right? To probably fix the pain that they're going through, to solve their problem. Instead, we just need to be present and be with them in that moment. And that is so much more powerful than any words that we could have. Years ago, I was leading a student ministry, and one of our small group leaders, who's in college age, I heard that his girlfriend had broken up with him. And it was through the grapevine, and so I asked them to, hang out. So we went to McAllister's because, it's where you talk about breakups. And we're sitting there across from each other, and, it started light. I was, just doing the normal, kind of going, hey, how's life going, all these things. And then I finally just asked him, hey, I heard you and so-and-so broke up. And, this was, the girl that, he thought he was going to marry at that moment in his life. And you could just instantly, the room changed, right? He was just, couldn't speak, tears started falling. And I was like, oh, man, maybe I shouldn't have asked this quick in this moment. And I, he tried to keep talking, but every time he tried to talk, he would keep crying and couldn't get any words out. So then I awkwardly, for 10 minutes, was like, all right, well, maybe I need to speak some words into you. So then I tried to speak for a minute, and then I could tell, he still wanted to say something, but just couldn't get it out. And let me tell you, it was one of the most uncomfortable lunches of my entire life. We were there for an hour and 15 minutes. And after that first 20-minute mark, it was just him sobbing at the table with me putting my hand on his shoulder, just letting him cry it out. And if you remember, back in the day, McAllister's used to walk up to you every about 5 to 10 minutes and say, hey, do you guys need a refill on your tea? They did not care that there was a man crying at our table. They still came up every 5 to 10 minutes asking if we wanted tea. I'm like, come on, read the room, right? And I remember in that moment, after we got done and, we kind of got up, and to be honest, we did the conversation, even the lunch kind of ended weird, because he finally just said, I got to go to class, and went to class. And I remember even in that moment feeling oh man, I think I messed up. He was just sobbing and crying for, almost a full hour in McAllister's, and I said nothing, and I was just, being there with him, but that surely wasn't what I needed. I probably should have had some sort of cool verse I could have thrown at him, or had some really powerful words. But then much farther down the line, he reached back out to me and said no, to be honest, I really appreciated you just sitting there with me in that moment. He said everyone else that I was meeting with, all my buddies, kept going man, this is what you need to do. And it was either hey, she wasn't the right person for you anyways, or it was hey, you're going to be better off anyways, or maybe this is how you can get her back, all these different things. He said, you were the only person that just let me just sit there and just be upset and just feel how I was feeling without making me have to feel like I had to change for you. That is what we can do. So much more powerful than any words that we speak. Another moment from Jesus' life. A woman is dragged into the middle of a crowd. She's been caught in adultery. It's not rumored. It's not suspected. She was caught red-handed. And the religious leaders then throw her in front of Jesus and says, the law says that she should be stoned. What do you say? And that's just a little sidebar. This story always drives me nuts that the dudes know we're in the picture, right? They're yeah, but we got the girl, right? But no, it's just, I don't know. Sorry. This is neither here nor there. But now, don't miss this. Because this isn't about her sin, right? This is a bigger, a trap for Jesus. If he says, let her go, he's breaking the law they have been following. And if he says, stone her, then he loses all moral authority about love and grace, right? And in the middle of that tension, Jesus does something really, really strange. He bends down and he just starts writing in the dirt. Just drawing in the dirt. And you can imagine, in that moment, there's a whole crowd around him. It's heated. They're angry. They're ready to act. And Jesus, in that moment, just slows everything down. And then he stands back up and he says, let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. And as you can imagine, it's one by one, they're probably all kind of looking at each other, and then they kind of Homer Simpson themselves back into the bushes, slowly one by one walking away until it's just Jesus and this woman standing there. Can you imagine that moment? that public shame that she was just going through, that exposure, that fear. And now there's just this moment of silence, because as soon as Jesus said that, he just went back down to just playing in the dirt again. And it says this in John 8:10-11. It says, Jesus straightened up and he asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Go now and leave your life of sin." And don't miss this moment. Like, Jesus does two things at the exact same time, even just in that one statement, right? Because he refuses to condemn her, but he also refuses to pretend like her sin doesn't matter, right? Like, that is empathy. Again, I know I already said this earlier, but to make sure we're on the same page, empathy is not approving of something or everything that somebody does, right? It's not ignoring truth. It's not removing boundaries. Instead, it's about choosing to step into someone's story without reducing them to their worst moment. Everyone else in that moment saw a label. I said he saw an adulterer, a failure, a problem, and Jesus just looked across and saw a person in all of her humanity. He saw her shame. He saw her fear. She saw that she mattered. And before he corrected her behavior, he restored her dignity. Empathy says, I see you even here, right now, in this moment. That may not be your proudest moment. I still see you right now. And I think, to be honest, like, this is where we can really struggle, because we are all fans of hanging out with people that agree with the things that we like and we do, right? Like, my favorite album of all time is Pet Sounds 1966 by the Beach Boys. It is the greatest album, unequivocally. And if you want to talk to me after the service, we're going to have a great conversation. I would love to. And you're going to walk away and we're like, man, that person was awesome, right? Or like, I love March Madness, Boiler Up. But like, and if you want to talk to me about March Madness after the service, I would love to talk to you. And after we get done, I'm like, man, that was awesome. I feel so pumped about talking to this person, right? Or if you want to talk to me about how Baja Blast is the greatest Mountain Dew of all time, I would love to talk to you about that. And we can go to Taco Bell, we'll go grab some. It's going to be a great time, right? It's really easy to have those conversations. But what about those people who live differently than you? Who maybe vote differently than you? Who believe differently than you? Like, can we just be honest? Like, even the people that you like are most like, no one holds all the same beliefs as you. Like, my wife is my best friend in the world, and we agree on a lot of stuff. And even we aren't 100% on agreeing on everything at all times, right? Jesus shows up and says that you can deeply understand someone without agreeing with everything in their life. Like, for us, we can still love our coworkers, our family members, our friends. Like, man, can you just imagine? And I know it feels a little hard to imagine right now in like the political climate and just in the United States in general today. But can you just imagine how different our world would be if we lived like that? That if someone didn't vote for the same person as you, that we could still love them and just go, you know what, I don't quite get it, but I'm trying to see it from where you're coming from and how you would feel. It's one more story from Jesus' life. Jesus and his disciples are headed to Jericho. They're walking there. And as they're walking through there, there's like, some people on the streets. And there's this man who was a blind beggar who was standing there, asking for help. And then he heard from the people around him that Jesus was there. So he starts calling out to Jesus, knowing that if anybody could heal him, if anybody could do anything, it was going to be Jesus, right? He starts shouting out for Jesus. And everyone around him is like trying to like, shush, like, you don't matter. You don't quit yelling out for Jesus. And Jesus walks right up to this blind beggar and he says this, "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. And I'll be honest, like, I think if I would have read this as a kid or maybe even like, early teens, high school, college, I would have been like, bro, Jesus is missing this, bro. He's asking him what he wants. Like, clearly, like, he's blind, right? Like, he's a beggar. Like, he wants money or he wants his sight back. Like, those are the two things you would want, right? Seems obvious what he wants, Jesus. What are you doing here? But psychologists actually tell us that asking open-ended questions helps people to feel known more and better understood. So like Jesus, well before we knew even what the word psychology was, giving us a master class on empathy 2,000 years ago. Jesus asked him this question to not assume what this guy wants, to not just rush over him, not to decide what he needs for him. Instead, he lets this man speak for himself. He gives him dignity in that moment. And he tells him, when everyone else is telling him that he doesn't matter, that he's just kind of just a side of society, he's like, no. Your voice matters. Your story matters. I want to hear you. Jesus shows us that empathy isn't about just deciding for someone else or assuming. Empathy gives them space. It listens. It lets them be heard. And for us, how many people do we walk by, maybe even every single day, about people who need to be heard? Who maybe their voice has been silenced. We just don't take time to listen to them in the same way. Maybe this week, the biggest thing you could do is just take some time to just hear someone else's story, to be present with them. And if Jesus was a genius at empathy, for those of us who follow Jesus, like this is something that hopefully for us, we are also growing in as we follow Jesus. This year, we've been talking about this idea of just thriving, right? Not just surviving in life. And when we are showing empathy to other people, not only are we helping them to live to their fullest and their best lives, but it also is helping us to live better and fuller lives. So for us, like, what do we do with this? How do we live this out? How do we become more empathetic? And I think there's at least a few things that we can do to kind of maybe just be more aware of and be more conscious of. The first one is just pause. Like, before you react, just stop and consider the story beneath the behavior. Because just like that iceberg we showed earlier, let's be honest, we don't always really know most of what's really going on inside of somebody's brain, right? And all the different things that they're bringing with them in that moment. Like when somebody cuts you off this week in traffic, instead of just instantly getting mad, and I get it, this is going to be a transition, take a deep breath and then just say, maybe what are they dealing with? Maybe they really are just, a jerk, but that's all right. It took you 2 seconds of your time and you had to slowly slow down, right? Maybe they're late for work and I don't know, normally I get to work a little early, so I'm like, you know what? That 2 seconds didn't really change anything and now I can help them get to work a little bit quicker. Maybe they should have gotten ready earlier, yes, all the things, but you know what? Is it really that big of a deal? Empathy starts with awareness and just being aware of someone else's humanity, that guess what? We all make mistakes. So pause and just kind of consider what they might be going through. Second thing is ask. Ask open-ended questions and let people speak. And I know this sounds obvious, but actually listen. Don't do that thing where they're telling a story and then in your mind you're just preparing the next thing that you're going to say, right? Or all right, your talk, now it's my turn, talk, right? And we just go back and forth. No. What if this week, you had a conversation with somebody and you asked questions and you actually listened and then actually said, ask them more follow-up questions about that thing? Maybe that you wouldn't even normally ask because you're kind of in the moment trying to go to the next thing or trying to connect with them or relate to them some story about how you also did that silly thing one time too. What if next time you just took the time to actually just understand more about them and how they are feeling in that moment? When's the last time you asked somebody how are you really doing right now? What's been the hardest part of your week? What if this week you asked somebody some of those questions and just listened when they spoke? And third thing is be present. Be present with someone in their pain without rushing to solve it. Presence, not problem solving. I see you. I feel this with you. Again, there are so many things going on. We obviously couldn't fix all the different things for everybody. And maybe you can. Maybe there's a little piece that you can help, listen to them. Maybe you can make them a meal. Maybe you can help them through something that they're going through. But oftentimes, it's just letting them feel heard and known in that moment. For you, is there someone who maybe has been going through it that you could check on instead of rushing to the next thing? That person that maybe you're thinking of them right now. Maybe you've been thinking about them all week. You're I should reach out to that person. Yeah, you should reach out to that person. Maybe that is like your like little reminder, the Holy Spirit whispering to you like, yes, I need to like maybe make that connection and just see how they're doing and be there with them through this. One last story to kind of close this out. Back in the 1970s, when babies were born premature, they would put them in the incubators, and and then they would give them oxygen, nutrition, and kind of temperature control the area, right? Like just barely enough to kind of basically like these are the basic human necessities for a baby, right? And they were medically stable, but they weren't thriving. And then in the 1970s, they developed this thing called kangaroo care. It has a lot of different parts of it, but one of the big things that like maybe you've heard of if you've ever been to the hospital when a baby was born is skin to skin, of like having the baby be skin to skin with the parents, right? And when they did that, they did this big study of like babies who were just kept in an incubator and babies who were mostly in the incubator but then had moments where they got to be skin on skin with the parent, that those babies then gained weight faster. They had stronger immune systems, more stable heart rates. Their survival rates dramatically increased. And the difference was just human connection, right? Someone was with them in that. Those babies it's like they almost just needed to know that they weren't alone. That even before they even understood a word, that they just needed presence. And if we're honest, like we're still the same. We may look grown up and mature, some of us more than others, I get it. But we still need that feeling of connection, of being known. That feeling of being known isn't just an additional bonus, but it's something that we actually need to thrive in life. Jesus was a genius when it comes to empathy. Because empathy says, I see you, you matter, you are known. And if we are people who have been fully known and fully loved by Jesus, then we need to be people who go out and love others that same way.